It was a typical Thursday afternoon when Dan Matthews woke up in the ICU. The last thing he remembered was driving home from work, the soft hum of the radio filling the car, and then nothing. The sterile smell of antiseptic and the steady beep of machines brought him back to reality. His head throbbed, and his body ached in ways he didn't know were possible. As he slowly opened his eyes, he noticed the room was empty except for him and a faint light coming from the hallway. Disoriented, Dan tried to piece together what had happened. He remembered the doctors mentioning something about a car accident and the severity of his injuries. He had been in and out of consciousness for days, maybe even weeks. Just as he was about to drift back into a restless sleep, he heard a familiar voice outside the door. It was his wife, Sarah, talking on the phone. Her tone was hushed but urgent, and the words she spoke sent a chill down Dan's spine. "I don't care if he wakes up or not," Sarah said, her voice dripping with cold indifference. "The insurance payout is more than enough. We just need to keep playing the grieving spouse act a little longer. Yeah, the doctor said he might not make it, but if he does, we'll deal with it then." Dan's heart raced. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. The woman he had loved and trusted for years was talking about him as if he were already dead. And worse, she seemed to be planning something sinister. Fear and anger surged through him, but he knew he had to stay calm. He couldn't let her know he was awake. With a Herculean effort, Dan closed his eyes and regulated his breathing, pretending to be unconscious. Sarah walked into the room, her heels clicking softly against the linoleum floor. She sat down next to his bed, her demeanor completely transformed into one of a concerned and loving wife. "Oh, Dan," she whispered, taking his hand in hers. "I hope you wake up soon. I miss you so much." The contrast between her words and the conversation he had just overheard was jarring. Dan felt a wave of nausea but forced himself to remain still. He needed to gather his thoughts and figure out his next move. Over the next few days, Dan continued to feign unconsciousness whenever Sarah was around. He listened carefully to her conversations and slowly pieced together the full extent of her betrayal. It turned out that she had been seeing someone else for months, and they had concocted a plan to cash in on his life insurance policy. The accident had been their golden opportunity. One evening, when Sarah had left for a supposed grief counseling session, Dan summoned all his strength and motioned for a nurse. He scribbled a note explaining his situation and begged for help. The nurse, initially skeptical, saw the desperation in his eyes and agreed to inform the authorities. The next few days were a blur of secretive planning and hidden conversations. The hospital staff worked with the police to set up a sting operation. Dan remained in his pretend comatose state, waiting for the right moment. Finally, the day came. Sarah walked into the room, her fake concern more grating than ever. She picked up the phone and made another call to her lover, detailing how she planned to finally pull the plug if Dan didn't miraculously pass away soon. That was the cue. Police officers burst into the room, catching Sarah off guard. She tried to play innocent, but the evidence was overwhelming. Dan opened his eyes and looked directly at her, the betrayal evident in his gaze. "Dan, you're awake?" Sarah stammered, her face draining of color. "Yes, Sarah," Dan replied, his voice weak but determined. "And I heard everything." Sarah was arrested, and Dan was finally able to focus on his recovery. The emotional wounds would take much longer to heal than the physical ones, but he was determined to rebuild his life. Friends and family rallied around him, offering support and comfort. Dan's story became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the unexpected turns life could take and the strength it took to face them head-on. And as he slowly pieced his life back together, he found a new sense of purpose and resilience he never knew he had. Thank you so much for watching this video. I put a link down below about something very interesting you'll like. Go check that out. Subscribe for more. See you on the next video.